I refused to sign the birth certificate. The words slipped out of me before my brain had time to second-guess them. The nurse froze, pen mid-air, her latex gloves catching the light from the overhead fluorescent. My wife's face turned pale under the sterile glow, the color draining faster than the IV bag next to her. A duffel bag sat heavy by my boots, cement dust still clinging to it from the job site, like a ghost of the life I thought I was building. The hospital form lay flat on the tray, lines waiting for my name to crown me father of a child I wasn't sure was mine. And tucked in my jacket pocket, I could feel the sharp fold of a DNA envelope pressing against my ribs like a blade. My name's Jack Mercer, 45, Dallas, Texas. 20 years pouring concrete under the burning sun, hands scarred but steady. My Ford F-150 has hauled more rebar and lumber than I can count, and the only thing heavier than those loads was the weight of a family I swore I'd carry until my last breath. I'm not fancy, never was. I'm a Bud Light on the porch kind of man, ESPN humming in the background while bacon sizzles on a cast iron skillet. My story isn't polished, but it's mine, and it was supposed to be ours. I met Rachel at a cookout behind a buddy's ranch house, where the smell of grilled brisket tangled with the smoke from cheap fireworks. She was 23 back then, still in nursing school, hair catching fireflies like a net of a copper. I was older, rough around the edges, but she laughed at my clumsy jokes and didn't flinch at the calluses on my palms when I handed her a paper plate piled high with ribs. That night, after the sparks died in the sky, we drove my truck down to a Sonic, shared a strawberry milkshake, and sat quiet, just watching headlights skim across the highway. I thought, this is it. This is the girl who will make even a busted-up man like me feel whole. The early years had a sweetness I can still taste. Garlic pasta dinners in our little starter ranch home, sauce bubbling while she hummed along to Shania Twain. Sunday BBQs with her family, her dad flipping burgers while we played cornhole in the yard. Weekend road trips where we'd roll the windows down and let the Texas wind roar through, her hair flying wild while she belted out 90s country songs. I remember one Valentine's card, cheap Hallmark, with her handwriting slanted across it. Forever starts now. I tucked that card into the back of our wedding photo frame, right beside the picture of us standing under a string of white lights, cowboy boots in the dirt, her veil brushing my shoulder. We weren't rich, but I thought we were rich enough in love. I'd come home bone-tired, cement dust embedded in my skin, and she'd meet me at the door, barefoot, with a glass of iced tea, the smell of lemon candle wafting through the house. Sometimes we'd dance slow in the kitchen, my steel-toe boots scuffing against linoleum, her laugh bubbling when I spun her too hard. There were mornings where she'd bring me diner coffee in a to-go cup, bacon wrapped in a paper napkin saying, "Don't skip breakfast, you mule." She was the soft to my hard edges, and I believed we were building forever. But forever has cracks. They start hairline, invisible. Then one day, the whole foundation shifts. I should have noticed the first time she brushed off my touch with, "I'm just tired," or the way her eyes darted when her phone buzzed face down on the table. There were little things, a late night at work, a new perfume that didn't match the woman I knew, laughter that didn't have me in it. And then there was him, Daniel, my best friend since high school. We'd played football together under those blazing Friday night lights, shared smokes in the back of his dad's Chevy, even bailed each other out when bar fights got rowdy. He was the guy I trusted enough to hand my house keys when I was out of town. He was Uncle Dan to my kids, the man who sat at my table every Thanksgiving, carving turkey with grease on his chin, calling Rachel sis with a grin that seemed harmless. I didn't think twice when Rachel said she was going on a girls' trip. Duffel bag slung over her shoulder, credit card bill left carelessly on the counter. I kissed her cheek, told her to have fun. That was before I noticed the receipts from a hotel I'd never been to, before I saw the gas charges for towns that weren't on her route. That was before the DNA envelope burned a hole in my jacket pocket, before the hospital form asked me to seal my fate with a stroke of ink. Back then, though, I told myself it was nothing. A late night is just a late night. A laugh is just a laugh. A friend is just a friend. I sat on our porch with a Bud Light, ESPN murmuring through the screen door, and I convinced myself we were solid. But memory has a cruel way of replaying the little things once you know the ending. The way she lingered too long at Daniel's jokes. The way he offered to help her carry groceries when I was right there. The whisper of her voice on the phone late at night. No, he's asleep. All the dots I refused to connect because I was too busy loving her. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't arrive with a warning shot. It creeps in soft, wrapping itself in the comfort of trust until it's too late to pull away. I kept all the tokens of our love close, maybe too close. The wedding photo frame sat on our mantel, her veil still bright in the glass. The Valentine's card yellowed at the edges, but tucked safe where I could see it when I needed reminding. Our ranch home stood like a fortress, the paint peeling but ours, every corner soaked with memories of laughter, arguments, makeups, and whispered promises. Those props became talismans I clung to, proof that what we had was real. And yet, when the nurse pushed that hospital form toward me, her pen ready, I felt my hand freeze. My boots squeaked against the sterile floor. I remembered every moment that built us, every brick of love we'd stacked together, and for the first time I wondered if it was all scaffolding, waiting to collapse. Rachel looked at me from the hospital bed, her eyes wide, lips trembling in a way that used to melt me. But now, I couldn't tell if it was exhaustion or guilt. The social worker by the door shifted uncomfortably, glancing from the form to me, sensing the storm under the calm. The heart monitor beeped, steady as a metronome, marking the seconds I stood still, my jaw tight, my breath shallow. Back then, I thought we were building forever. I didn't realize forever had an expiration date. Rachel came home from that girls' trip with a brand new habit of keeping her phone face down like it was a loaded gun, and I was the wrong set of hands. She started calling everything work. Even when there wasn't a scrub top in sight, work dinners, work training, work energy, like the word itself could absolve late nights or perfume that didn't smell like her usual clean cotton. "You're being dramatic," she'd say with a light laugh, when I asked why her GPS history was empty again, why her hair smelled like hotel soap instead of our lemon body wash. Then she'd brush past me for the shower, letting the steam erase whatever answer she didn't want to give. The first crack in my denial came from a place as ordinary as a kitchen chair. I was fixing a wobbly leg, looking for a screwdriver in the junk drawer, when my hand closed around a box I hadn't bought. An at-home DNA test kit, the kind influencers hawk with discount codes, half buried beneath birthday candles and stray batteries. It was slit open along the top, like someone had peeked and stuffed it away fast. I stood there with the flimsy cardboard in my palm, feeling something tight pull across my chest, and told myself it could be from a nursing seminar or one of her cousins fooling around with genealogy. That's what people do when they're scared of the answer. They author a gentler lie. A week later, Daniel swung by to borrow the ladder, a thing he could have done any of 100 Saturdays over 20 years. But he did it on a Tuesday at dusk, when porch lights flicker on and neighbors walk dogs past your mailbox, when the world feels honest because it's visible. He thumped the ladder on his tailgate and flashed me that same easy grin we'd traded since we were 17, then asked after Rachel with his eyes a fraction too bright, the way a man checks a door he already knows is open. "Night shift," I said. "She won't be back till morning." He nodded like that made sense and left too fast. No small talk about the Cowboys or our old coach's obituary, or the weather we always pretend to care about when there's nothing else to say. That night, I sat in the F-50 with the engine off and ESPN murmuring inside the house, and let my brain spool back through every Saturday beer, every Thanksgiving turkey carve, every time his palm clapped my shoulder while he called me brother. Suspicion is a slow acid. It doesn't burn until it pools. The next clue didn't come from some noir revelation. It arrived courtesy of modern convenience and my own laziness. I'd set up our iCloud family plan years ago because it made grocery lists easier and kept photos flowing into one big stream. Rachel's iPad lived on the coffee table like a coaster with a screen, good for recipes and YouTube, and showing her mom pictures of sunflowers. She never logged out of iMessage because why would she? That night, it pinged while I was boxing leftovers, a bright blue bubble announcing itself with the cheerful cruelty of technology. Got room for one more? The sender's number wasn't saved, just a Dallas area code and 4 digits I knew, without wanting to know. Daniel's burner? A second line? I didn't move for a full minute because stillness felt safer than the truth. Then another message appeared over it, this one from Rachel's name but not her voice. Flirty, offhand, a softness she hadn't used on me in months. "Sneak around the back. Don't text when you're on the road." The two threads overlapped, one climbing up the screen as the other pushed down, like a conversation trying not to be seen. I didn't reply, didn't breathe, didn't even blink hard because it felt like blinking might clear away the lines I needed to memorize. I grabbed my phone, took pictures of the screen the way a hunter takes trophies, each screenshot clicking into a new folder I'd create later, titled in all caps, Evidence. I didn't confront her, not then. The old me would have stormed into our bedroom, thrown the iPad on the bed, demanded answers in a voice that shook the blinds. But the man who refused to sign a birth certificate in a hospital full of witnesses had learned the value of quiet. So, I got methodical. I started with the mailbox. Credit card statements used to be background noise to me, just numbers between paychecks. Now they were scripture. I spread them across the kitchen table like maps, tracing charges with a ballpoint pen. Omni Dallas Hotel, Capitol Grill uptown, a Lyft trip that started at my house at 10:38 p.m. and ended at a high-rise I had never visited. 2 separate gas stations on the same night in 2 different suburbs, both with timestamps that matched hours she'd told me she was stuck charting patient vitals. I circled them in red, wrote dates in the margins the way foremen mark hairline fractures before the slab breaks. I printed the pages and slipped them into a manila folder, the thick kind lawyers use, because props matter when you're building a case, even if the only courtroom you'll ever see is your kitchen beneath a humming light. Then I went hunting for receipts in the physical world. In the passenger side pocket of her Camry, buried under a 5-day-old fast food bag and a spare mask, I found a gas receipt for a pump off I-35 the same night she'd said her friend Brittany needed her for girl stuff. In her purse, I found a folded square of cardstock from Capitol Grill, the ink pressed deep from a server's heavy hand, showing a ribeye, a lobster mac, 2 cocktails with top-shelf liquor, nothing like Rachel's usual salad and iced tea. Scrawled at the bottom was a phone number with Dan underlined twice. I photographed that slip on the hood of my truck, the streetlight throwing a sickly cone over my driveway, and I felt something permanent give way inside my chest, like a rebar tie snapping under tension. I kept my face calm while I collected more. I got a small notebook, the kind construction guys carry for measurements, and started noting strange patterns with timestamps like a beat cop. Wednesday, 9:12 p.m., perfume didn't match. Friday, 7:46 a.m., scrubs in hamper, smell like hotel shampoo. Sunday, 3:05 p.m., shower before groceries. I placed a cheap motion camera facing our driveway, disguised with a fake potted fern. I wasn't looking to go viral, I just wanted license plates. 2 nights later, at 11:52 p.m., the camera pinged my phone. Rachel's Camry rolled in, headlights slashed the living room wall, and 30 seconds after the engine cut, a second set of headlights crept past, paused, then glided away. I drove that route the next morning and found the only thing at the end of that street, Omni Dallas, all glass and angles, expensive without effort. I widened my search to digital. iMessage on the iPad gave me fragments because she had learned, at least sometimes, to delete. But photo metadata is an honest friend people forget. She had posted a girls' night boomerang of clinking glasses, 3 manicured hands in frame, gold ring flashes, and painted nails. But the live photo gave it away. A 4th hand flicked into the edge of the shot, rough-knuckled, scab across the thumb, the exact kind of work scar a man gets from sliding a ladder rung too fast. I zoomed and stared until the pixels turned into blocks, until the truth dissolved into geometry. I saved it anyway. I exported her health app cycle data because that's what I had turned into. A man willing to graph a woman's body to protect his own heart. And watched the dates line up with business trips I never took, and stretches of tenderness at home that now made sense. We are affectionate with our lives when we are asking them to hold. The strangest warning didn't come from a gadget. It came from a woman with anxious eyes in a fluorescent break room who kept wringing a napkin between her fingers. Her name was Kendra. We'd met twice at hospital holiday parties, exchanged the kind of small talk spouses trade when their lives orbit the same nurse. "Jack," she said, showing up at my job site with a box of kolaches and a face like someone delivering a verdict. "I shouldn't be here. I mean, this could get me in trouble. But I like you. You're good to the girls when you come by. And I don't know what's true, but the way Rachel's been acting..." She didn't finish. She just told me Rachel had taken extra breaks labeled education, had logged out early a few times while still clocked in, had been seen by 2 different coworkers near the Omni bar meeting a vendor, which is hospital code for anything you want it to be. I thanked her without blinking and took the pastries I didn't eat and added her name to the folder. Witnesses matter in a story even when they refuse to testify. Once I started collecting, I couldn't stop. The folder gained weight until it felt like a brick. Screenshots of messages that said nothing and everything. "You free? Not tonight. Missed you, can't. He's home. Receipts with tipping habits I recognized as Daniel's. He always left 25% because his mama taught him generosity was its own kind of charm. Lift routes that built a triangle between our house, the hospital, and a hotel bar with leather booths that sink you into bad decisions. I kept my days the same, pouring slabs, checking levels, smoking at lunch behind the tool shed, but my nights turned into stakeouts of the soul. I learned the rhythm of her lies. I stopped asking where she'd been because a good fisherman doesn't splash the water before the cast. The iPad was the key, and I treated it like a vault I could only crack by patience. iMessage Sync didn't always show content, but it never lied about time. Each ping, each vibration, each little gray typing bubble that blinked and vanished. Those had timestamps I could cross-reference with the paper trail I was building. Tuesday, 10:06 p.m., a text from Rachel to me, halfway home from the unit. Exhausted. Tuesday, 10:09 p.m. Capital Grill receipt printed for table 12, 2 entrees, dessert split, a credit card signature that matched the bottom-heavy swoop I'd seen on Daniel's checks since we were kids. Wednesday, 8:14 p.m., girls' night went late, crashing at Brittany's. Wednesday, 8:22 p.m., Omni-Valet ticket issued to a gray Camry with 3 digits that matched our plate. Thursday, 6:31 a.m., morning hun, love you. Thursday, 6:05 a.m. Gas receipt time-stamped from a pump 20 miles north of Brittany's apartment, a direction that made no sense unless you drew a line between our bed and a hotel elevator. I stopped trying to swallow around the lump in my throat. I let it sit there like a warning I finally respected. On a Friday, the iPad lit up with a message I've replayed in my head so many times, the words feel carved into bone. I can't do next weekend. He'll be suspicious. There was no name attached in the preview. I didn't tap it open. I learned not to because opening sometimes erased the thread from her phone, and I wanted her patterns intact. Instead, I set the tablet down and walked to the counter where that old DNA kit still sat lodged between junk and denial. I took a picture of it, then another, the way crime scene texts repeat angles so a jury can't argue with perspective. I slid the box into the folder and wrote in Sharpie on the tab, timeline. I added a second word beneath it, motive, not because I knew hers, but because mine had arrived. I began to speak to Rachel in sentences short enough to fit on a subpoena. What time will you be home? Who's driving? Do you need gas money? She breezed past each one with a smile that used to warm me and now felt like a coat thrown over contraband. I started wearing my calm like armor, voice steady, jaw tight, breath shallow, because if there's one thing a liar can't stand, it's a mirror that doesn't blink. The night before everything cracked open, I pulled the statements again, laid them next to the iPad like puzzle pieces, and pressed my finger to the glass as a new message to me appeared at 9:43 p.m. Running late, charting got crazy, don't wait up. I didn't answer. I just picked up the Omni receipt from that same night, the one printed 9:41 p.m., and felt the cold certainty settle into my bones the way concrete cures, slow, inevitable, permanent. The timestamp on her text to me matched the hotel receipt. That's when I knew. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was proof. The day everything came to a head wasn't scripted by me, though God knows I'd rehearsed it in my mind 100 different ways. On the porch, with a Bud Light sweating against my palm, behind the wheel of the F-150 with ESPN filling the silence, staring at the manila folder in my lap like it was a loaded gun. But real life doesn't wait for your timing. It kicks the door open when you're half asleep. For me, it happened in a hospital room, the smell of disinfectant clinging to my clothes, a heart monitor beeping steady as a metronome while Rachel screamed through contractions. I was standing at her side because that's what a husband is supposed to do, even when he has already packed a folder thick with proof that husbandry has been a joke. Nurses swarmed around us, efficient, moving like dancers who'd done the steps 1,000 times. One of them, a young girl with tired eyes, asked if I wanted to cut the cord. I almost laughed. Me? Cut the cord for a child I already knew wasn't mine? But I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. I just stood there, jaw tight, breath shallow, my hands balled into fists in the pockets of my jeans. Rachel screamed again, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead, eyes darting to me like I was supposed to be the anchor. All I could think was, this isn't my storm to anchor. When the baby's cry split the room, a sound both fragile and fierce, I felt a hollowness open up inside me. The nurse wrapped the little body in a pink blanket and handed her to Rachel, who cooed like this was salvation. Then the social worker appeared again, clipboard ready, asking me to sign the birth certificate. The same line, the same blank space waiting for my name to crown me father. Only this time, I didn't freeze. I pulled the folder from my duffel bag, the one I'd carried in like a soldier smuggling in ammo. I opened it on the rolling tray, spreading out receipts, screenshots, hotel bills, gas slips, even the photo of that DNA kit buried in our drawer. The nurse gasped. The social worker blinked like she'd seen a ghost. Rachel's face went slack. All the glow drained away, leaving only panic and something darker. Anger that I had dared to shatter her illusion. "You think this is the time?" she hissed, clutching the baby tight to her chest. "This is the only time," I said, calm, cutting. "Because for 9 months you've been telling me I'm crazy. For 9 months you've been playing me for a fool. Now the truth gets a witness." The nurse stammered something about needing the doctor, but no one moved. Even the heart monitor seemed to hold its breath. Rachel's lips trembled, then steadied, and she spat. "You're being dramatic. You've always been insecure. You never trusted me." I leaned closer, voice low enough for only her to hear, but sharp enough to cut. "I trusted you with my life. You said you haven't loved me in years. There's no way to mean that lightly." The door creaked open, and in walked Daniel. Not in scrubs, not in visitor clothes, just jeans, a t-shirt, his hair damp like he'd rushed here from a shower. He froze when he saw the spread of papers, his eyes flicking to Rachel, to me, to the baby. Then he tried for the same grin he'd used to disarm me since high school, only this time it slid right off his face. "What's going on?" he asked, though his voice cracked in the middle like he already knew. I didn't answer. I picked up the Omni receipt, held it between 2 fingers, and said, "Table for 2, ribeye and lobster mac, 9:41 p.m. That's the same minute she texted me from the unit. "Tell me, Dan, was she charting your vitals?" A laugh broke from one of the nurses, sharp, shocked, involuntary. Another pulled out her phone like instinct. Screen tilted just enough for me to know she was recording. That's the world we live in now. Humiliation goes viral before the first tear hits the floor. Rachel tried to stand, still clutching the baby, but the cords tethered her to the bed. "Stop this! You're ruining everything!" she cried. "No," I said, sliding the DNA envelope onto the tray, the bold black letters facing up. "You ruined everything. I'm just showing the world the blueprint." The social worker, pale and stiff, cleared her throat. "Sir, if you're contesting paternity, we'll need to—" "Already done," I cut in, tapping the envelope. "I had the test. 0%. This baby's not mine." The room went silent. The only sound was the baby's tiny cry, oblivious to the wreckage of the adults around her. Rachel's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, looking everywhere but at me, muttering, "It's not what it looks like," which earned another disbelieving laugh from the nurse with the phone. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, "and now everyone sees it." Rachel's face twisted, desperation bleeding into rage. "You can't do this here, not in front of them, not like this." I stepped back, folded my arms, and let the silence work for me. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to throw punches. The truth was heavier than any fist. The witnesses in that room would carry the story further than I ever could. And that's when the door swung wider, and a hospital security guard stepped in, alerted by the commotion. Behind him, through the crack, I saw more phones raised, more curious faces gathering. This wasn't just a private implosion anymore. It was a spectacle, a courtroom without a judge, a trial by public eyes. Rachel screamed, "You're humiliating me!" I looked at her one last time, my voice steady, jaw tight, breath shallow. "No, Rachel, you humiliated yourself. I'm just giving the world a front row seat." The nurse with the phone whispered, "World star," half to herself, half to the growing audience. And that's how I knew. This moment wasn't just ours anymore. It was about to live forever. As the baby wailed louder, as Daniel stammered excuses no one believed, as Rachel begged me to stop, I just stepped back toward the corner of the room, pulled a small flask from my jacket pocket, and took a slow sip of whiskey. The burn slid down my throat like closure. The last thing I remember before the guard told everyone to clear out was Rachel's scream, raw, broken, defiant, as phones captured every second, and me, calm in the middle of it all, sipping whiskey while her world collapsed. The days after that hospital eruption felt like stepping into a new country, where the air carried a different weight, and every street sign pointed away from the life I thought I knew. Rachel was discharged 2 days later, wheeled out with the baby in her arms, but she didn't ride home in my truck. Daniel pulled up in his black Chevy, and for the first time in 20 years, I didn't wave, didn't nod, didn't call him brother. I just stood in the parking lot, paperwork folder under my arm, divorce packet already clipped together inside. They drove away, tail lights glowing red against the pale hospital walls, and I felt something like peace rising in my chest. Not joy, not relief, just the steady hum of a man who knows his road is his alone now. The legal side moved fast, almost mechanical. Texas doesn't mess around with paternity once a DNA test says 0. My lawyer, a lean man in a gray suit who smelled like cigar smoke, filed everything in record time. Divorce petition, custody disclaimers, house retention clauses. Rachel's attorney tried to argue about emotional distress and shared assets, but the judge didn't blink. "Mr. Mercer," he said, tapping his DNA results with a blunt finger, "you are not the father." That ends the argument. The gavel cracked like thunder, and just like that, the last rope tying me to Rachel's mess snapped. I walked out of that courthouse with the manila folder emptied of its poison, divorce papers signed, custody rights irrelevant because the child wasn't mine, and the deed to my house still in my name. My boots hit the marble floor with the weight of finality. Outside, I popped the tailgate of the F-150, cracked a Bud Light, and watched Rachel and Daniel climb into their car across the lot. They didn't look at me. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe shame had finally bent their necks. Either way, I didn't need their eyes anymore. Life after betrayal isn't clean. It comes in jagged edges and late-night echoes. For weeks, I'd wake at 2 a.m., expecting to hear her keys in the door, her soft laugh muffled by the hallway. Instead, the house stayed silent. ESPN reruns whispering on the TV until I shut it off and let the dark hold me. But slowly, I filled the silence with new sounds. The sizzle of pancakes on Sunday mornings, bacon curling in the skillet. The scrape of crayons across paper as my niece, my brother's kid, sat at my kitchen table, drawing stick figures with big smiles and writing "My Forever Team" in shaky letters at the top. I taped that drawing to the fridge, right where Rachel used to pin grocery lists, and every time I opened the door for milk, I felt a pulse of something better than revenge, healing. Neighbors noticed. One evening, my brother dropped by with a six-pack and sat with me on the porch as the Texas sunset painted the sky in blood-orange streaks. We didn't talk much. Brothers don't need to. He cracked open a beer, clinked it against mine, and said, "To trash taking itself out." We laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but the kind that leaves space for air and to rush back into lungs that have been tight too long. I started fixing up the house, painted the porch rail white again, patched the dent in the drywall from years back when Rachel and I had thrown a picture frame in a fight, replaced the curtains she'd picked with plain ones that didn't smell like her perfume. Each nail I hammered felt like a stitch pulling me back together. The ranch-style place, once a museum of shared memories, became my fortress again, mine and mine alone. And the strange thing, I didn't miss her the way I thought I would. I missed the idea of her, the woman I met at that cookout with fireflies in her hair, the girl who scribbled "Forever starts now" in a Valentine's card. But that woman had left me long before her body ever did. She'd been gone in the late-night texts, the hotel receipts, the laughter that belonged to someone else. I realized I'd been grieving a ghost, and ghosts don't deserve to haunt forever. People asked if I wanted revenge. Did I want to slash his tires? Confront them in public again? Let the whole town know? Truth is, the hospital scene had already gone viral thanks to one nurse's shaky phone. I never posted it, but small towns move fast, and whispers travel faster. By the time I walked into Walmart for motor oil, I felt eyes on me, pity from some, respect from others, and an awkward silence whenever Rachel's name came up. Reputation is its own executioner. I didn't need to swing the axe. Instead, I poured myself into the small things. Breakfast with my niece, watching the Cowboys play with my brother, arguing over bad calls like kids again. Evenings on the porch with a Bud Light, the hum of cicadas filling the air. I took road trips alone, windows down, Texas wind in my face, remembering the freedom of asphalt stretching endless. And little by little, I found that peace doesn't arrive like fireworks. It seeps in quiet, like dawn easing across a dark sky. Sometimes I'd catch sight of Rachel around town, once at the grocery store, baby carrier hooked in her elbow, Daniel pushing the cart with his head ducked low. She looked older somehow, the glow gone, her shoulders curved under the weight of choices she couldn't undo. I didn't approach, didn't glare, didn't spit venom. I just walked past, grabbed my Bud Light from the cooler, and left her to her cold face and her cold bed. That was her world now. Mine was lighter. On one of those nights alone, sitting on the porch with the crickets and the quiet, I thought about forever. How I'd once believed it was something you built with another person, brick by brick, love as mortar. But forever isn't something you build. It's something you carry inside you. And if the other person drops theirs, it doesn't mean yours vanishes. It just means you've got to carry it for yourself. That's the lesson betrayal gave me. Not that people lie, not that love can die, but that self-respect is the only foundation that doesn't crack. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving Rachel. I walked away because I finally loved myself enough not to stay. And if you asked me now what I'd tell another man standing in a hospital with a duffel bag at his feet, a DNA envelope in his pocket, and a nurse holding out a pen, I'd say this: don't sign away your life for someone else's lie. Don't chain yourself to a future that isn't yours. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and sometimes that's the cleanest kind of miracle you'll ever get.